It's 12 o'clock in Frisco, Texas, and it's time for Smoker Broker Radio with Robert Mesh, a.k.a. the Smoker Broker. Robert is the owner of Small World Realty and has employed hundreds of real estate agents in his 17-year career. He has instructed and mentored over 10,000 real estate agents at the highly acclaimed Champions School of Real Estate and is considered an expert in Texas residential realty. Robert is also an advocate of true entrepreneurial spirit and has helped many to transition from corporate America into the world of self-employment. And now live from the studio to your world, the Smoker Broker.
Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Mesh, and I'm the guy that calls Smoker Broker. Happy Thursday. Hope everything's going well. It is Thursday, right? Yes, it is Thursday. Yep. I couldn't remember. I was starting to get confused. I was like, what day is it? Where are we at? Sometimes
Who am I? Why am I here?
What place do I have? You know, that happens more than you think. A lot of times when your schedule gets really busy, which in the summer happens quite a bit with me. Sometimes the days run together, and it's not uncommon for me during the time periods between May and really September that I will go like literally, 48-hour benders on actually working throughout that entire time. And I know that sounds weird, but it's not. If you look at the things we do and the business that we have in place, we have to have a lot of support for our agents during the day. And when they take up a lot of that day, that doesn't allow the rest of the stuff just to sit idle, which means it has to be done. So a lot of times I'll do that later at night and I'll just keep going. And, you can sit there and say that I'm a workaholic, or you can sit there and say that I work too much. I actually like what I do. And
there's mountains of cocaine. Mountains of cocaine.
God forbid if I had that or Adderall, what could the possibilities be?
Robert's desk looks like Tony Montana's. It's just a mountain of cocaine on the thing.
Sitting there on the desk or whatever. Oh.
Yeah.
I do have to admit, I have no desire for any of the harder ones, but I would love to see what Adderall would do for me. I'm wondering if I can go 72 hours or whatever, just like
I'm going on vacation.
But I do a lot of work, and I really don't consider it, or I enjoy it. I really do. I enjoy everything that I do. So there's a lot of time that I put into the things that we do, but I really enjoy all this stuff. But I really have been on a stretch for the last few weeks. But that's a good thing, because it means there's so many things going on with all the stuff that we're doing. And there's no doubt the market is at such a volatile, in a very good way, point. And I say volatile because we just don't know what to expect day to day, outside the fact that the houses are just still selling left and right, as fast as they possibly can. And we continue to struggle that buyers are not everybody who wants to buy a house can buy a house. But I do have faith that at some point there'll start to be just a little bit of a hesitation there, and more people will start getting back into the houses when they want to. I really have no concerns with the housing market. It's extremely healthy. And even when it does eventually slow down, the slowdown will be a good slowdown. So we see nothing but clear blue skies ahead for us for quite some time. And of course, that's always something, if you're biased and you're in the real estate world, that's something you look forward to. So all the new agents that we have out there and all the people who follow us, especially the new agents out there, you're very fortunate. You are in a market that really should continue to thrive for quite some time. And we just really... there is just no end in sight to where we see problems. We used to not say that. We would fear that there was going to be some type of economic recession, a depression, especially after COVID. You would think with all the businesses that went out that we would just be in just like the worst state of affairs. But, strangely, it really looks like the opposite. I did read something yesterday, and I want to say it was the Treasury Secretary that did throw a little bit of shade on how great everything is. She was pretty upfront in front of Congress and testifying, where she made it clear that if they don't pay all their loans by the summer, that there's going to be some problems. And I thought it was interesting, because we do continue to ride this wave of somewhat prosperity, that everything's going better, at least for most. And, the world's getting back to somewhat of a normalcy. And it showed that we're still not out of COVID's reach. COVID's reach wasn't just medically and health-wise. It's financial too, and the financial repercussions of COVID literally could be still in the works, maybe even for a year or two. Now, even with that said, I still don't believe economically that we're looking at any type of horror coming up. I think that would have already happened. And look, I'm not the expert in that. It's common sense. I'm a business guy, and I have a lot of friends in different industries. And, when you hear all of them saying the same things, it's very hard to believe that we're looking at some type of problem. But there's no doubt we do have a lot of debt out there, and we do continue to print money. And those are usually two bad things if they keep going in the same direction. Mm-hmm. So there's no doubt economically something's going to happen at some point. That would actually be a good conversation. I'm having one of our business partners, Mr. George DiGianni, coming on in a week or two. Next week, I think he comes on next week. And that probably would be a good conversation for him. He's very business driven. Yeah. I'd love to hear his comments.
He went to Harvard, Yeah,
he did. And, I like the fact he presses that left and right, and he'll tell you he does it. And he would even agree that he probably does it ad nauseum. And I probably would too if I had some of that background. And I think he does a really good job of placing that in there because there are very few people that have that type of knowledge. So I'm looking forward to talking to him. That actually is a good conversation. Actually, Brent, don't let me forget to remind myself I'd love to hear his take on where do we go with inflation right now, what does happen if we are late on some of those loans with the other countries, especially someone like China. What does that do to us? So that'd be interesting to see. Okay. We took off last week, and we had the week before, we had started on working with the buyer. We typically run those podcasts once. I tell myself I want to do it once a quarter, but I realized that I hadn't done it in almost a year. So we started with it, and as always, it's a multi-series podcast because we just, you can't work with the buyer in one show. In fact, I don't even think we got to where we got to the showings part.
No, we didn't.
We were still on showings. That just shows you how much it is. So we're actually going to just take right back off there and continue with that process. This is one of the better shows for agents who are trying to learn that have been taught out of a book or have gone through basic training, because as y'all have all figured out by this point, that just doesn't do enough, and you need a lot more than that. And that's what we do on the show. We help you. We fill in those pieces that nobody else will. So we're going to do that right now. As always, I got my buddy Brent over there. He is the heart and soul of what we do at SWR, and he helps me run just about 125 agents across the state of Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. As always, we are looking for more agents. We continue to grow. I love the fact that even though we have other brokerages that sometimes tune into the show or have their associates watch the show, you can look at that as a recruiting mechanism when I tell people we're still looking for new agents. But we have a very unique system in place. And most of the people who are looking to come with us, it's not a matter of recruiting them from somewhere else. It's a matter that they don't have that system in place. And we're probably the only place that they can find it. And that's why we always talk about the joinuswr.com, because the joinuswr.com tells you some of the specific things that we do, but especially as it focuses in on dual career part-time agents, you have to have systems in place to handle those people. And we are one of the primary and one of the only brokerages out there that do it. So it's really not, when we have other people watching, it's not like I'm saying, oh, you should come here. I'm telling them they should come here if they can't find what else they have. And most likely the person that they're coming from would say the same thing.
I think they should come here regardless. Everyone else is terrible.
A little more biased than I am.
Right. That's why they get paid to be biased.
But anyways, Brent's always there. We do run literally a 24/7 support network with some of the greatest agents out there. And we have a core set of agents that really run the model. And then we have a lot of other people that do it for various reasons. So we stay quite busy and still try to live our lives the best that we can. All right, so we were at the buying checklist part. We talked about showing. Brent, on that checklist, what does it come after when we start talking about doing the showings? What's the next step that we usually tell them in there?
Well, we're talking about, finance too, right? Like, do they have the lender and all that stuff? But I mean,
have we gone through the first questions that we asked them yet? Or
well, yeah, that's the very first thing is about, the price range and what they're interested in looking and what they're looking for in a house.
Did we go over that last time? Do you remember?
Yep.
Okay, we did.
Yep.
And then we got to, that's right, we got to the point where we set up the showings.
Yep.
And I remember that we even said that we were going to, we weren't going to discuss how to actually set up those showings because that's a different show. And then we said, here's the showings in there. And then we're at that point. So we're at the point now where we make our plans to go and show the house and start from that process. So let's continue there. When it comes to the showings, we said we left off where we schedule them, but when you do the showings, you have to have a little bit of understanding as to what's going on. It's not like you can just show up and start showing the houses. So one of the first things you're going to have to learn is when you're showing several houses, like let's say more than several, let's say 5 to 10 properties, if you can find that many houses to show at this point, you're going to want to have some type of rhyme and reason to how you're showing those because they might be apart distant-wise, and we only have such small windows. If you've never done this before, we typically only have a 1 hour time window, maybe 2 hours to show a house. So if we've got 5 or 6 houses, we can't say that we're going to show all of them between 3 and 4 today. We're going to have to say, well, it looks like we're going to be able to do these 2 or 3 in that time frame, and then we'll have to start stretching the model, whether it's 3:30 to 4:30, 4:30 to 5:30. But the point is we have to time it correctly. It sounds really easy, but it's not sometimes. Sometimes we're off. We don't know. Yeah, Brent, what are one of the problems with the time? What if we set the time that we think it's going to be? What are some of the things that can happen?
You get buyers that take forever in a house.
Yeah.
Or a buyer that's late. They show up late to that first listing in like 30 minutes. That sucks. Yeah, now you're scrambling.
I got to tell you too, I'm a super nice guy when it comes to my clients. And I think I have a lot of past clients that watch the show, but there is nothing more irritating when they do that or they go, hey, look, I'm going to need another 30 minutes. I'm like, you realize that this is time driven, that we can't just show up at these places and that's
right, and they're all linked up in a row on the map, like they all follow a path.
Well, yes, so you have a domino effect there too. The moment you have to adjust that one, you have to go back and do all the other ones too.
And boy, those listing agents sure love it if you have a client that doesn't show. Ooh, they love that.
Very frustrating. So it seems simple, but it's not. So you have to have some type of time plan in place, and you have to try to get a feel for what type of client are you dealing with. Now, if it's the first time, you're never going to know. I will give you our first takeaway of today. And this is a good one. This is even a good one for some veteran agents out there too that have never really pieced this together. If you're showing a higher dollar house and a bigger house, it's not the common sense is going to be it's going to take longer, but the key becomes really being flexible on. I'm not going to show 6 luxury houses in one day. If they're luxury, like if we're at 600, 700, 800K, I'll probably pick 2 or 3 of them and give them enough time because I know that one of those houses literally could be an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. Yeah. And whereas the normal, I mean, Brent, what are we normally looking at on a regular showing of like a $200,000, $300,000 house?
10 minutes tops, really.
Yeah. And even if they like it, we're probably only talking 20 or 30,
And on, like you were saying, on the high end homes, the ones that are $5+ million, that listing agent's going to be there and walk you through. And if they're slow moving, that's going to take an hour.
Too. You need to know that we typically think it's weird for a agent to be at our showings, the listing agent, and that is considered to be a very bad breach of etiquette, but not when it's luxury homes. In fact,
I like it actually.
Homes, yeah,
because they point out everything. Well, but they point out, they're like, hey, what kind of wood is that? Like, I wouldn't know, right? And they tell you all the features. Fine.
Well, and the seller insists on it most of the time.
Right.
All right, so that's good. That's a good takeaway too. So you had to be prepared for that. Obviously, a different level of process when you're dealing with a luxury home versus a run-of-the-mill, like the average home in Dallas-Fort Worth. You have to take in different instructions. So that's good.
I will say that it was cool that a lot of times when you show super high-end homes, the listing agent, they want to see proof of funds before you even show the house, right?
Yeah.
And But I will say that there was a certain celebrity that I was working with that was, all I had to do was just drop the name, and they're like, "Oh, it's okay, come on in. You don't have to show us anything." Like,
it's
that was
amazing
cool.
how someone's attitude changes when who they know the person.
I said I worked for the Smoker Broker, and they're like, "Don't worry about it. It's good."
It was my name that was enough.
It was your name.
The that is something a lot we don't disclose the celebrity and the famous people that work for Brett and I and several of our agents have handled a lot of those, and we have to be very discreet with them. But it is funny that the name itself will definitely change the attitude of someone who's looking in there. So another thing to point out, since our show is cross the state of Texas, and this is something that a lot of people are not aware. We have different showing capacities in the regions that we're at. A lot of people are surprised that the agents in Austin, they do not utilize a showing service. The agents down in Austin actually still do it the old way, and they still actually contact the agents. And
that's brutal.
So it's funny. Brent's looking at that, and he's right. His initial response to that is what most agents would say is like, "That sucks. I don't have to bother with them." But I got to tell you, the more I've looked at that and the problems that are out there, and of course all the assumptions that because Zillow owns certain showing services and the information, some of the folks down there in Austin just pulled out the old middle finger and said, "I don't need you. I'll do it myself." And you have to learn to appreciate. Does it suck, or is it worse? Does it suck more for someone to be stealing or doing whatever with your data? And I didn't say anybody by chance. I just said, what if someone's doing that?
Right.
Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, maybe they don't have it wrong. So
what does suck though is when you take a bunch of MLS numbers and you paste them into the showing service, and like 2 of them aren't in there, and you have to go through the agent. You're like, God.
Nobody wants to talk to the agent. The agent's always so difficult to get in touch with. So I love that. I'll give you another takeaway. If you are in Austin and you are the listing agent, you better damn well answer the phone if you're going to be the one that's the primary person for the showings. Someone has to answer. If you're going to be the one that's on for showings, you have to be looking at that phone every 5 to 10 minutes. It's just the way it is. And if you can't do that, you need to hire somebody who can, because it's your responsibility to get that house shown, and it's not supposed to be at your convenience. It's supposed to be at the customer or the client's convenience. So that's another great takeaway as well. All right, so we get in there, we show the houses. Let's talk about briefly, because this isn't we almost could probably do an episode on showings itself, but let's briefly describe, because a lot of the agents ask these questions, and the purpose of them watching this particular series is so that they know what to do when they go into a house. So when you get there, obviously you're going to have some type of device that has a box on it so that we can enter the house. That really comes in, there's really 3 forms. The first one is the old-fashioned way, literally the old combo box that you can still buy at Home Depot or Lowe's. You rarely see those on occupied homes. Every once in a while you'll see it on a vacant home because there's nothing really to steal in there. But as far as an occupied home goes, the newer boxes have technology driven, so we know who went in there and we know when they went in there. And that's information the seller wants to know. If they say someone came in the house and we weren't aware, we want to be able to tell them. If we have a combo box, we can't tell them that. So combo boxes rarely are used unless the house is vacant. And even then, they're only used if the seller gave us permission. So most of them, you're going to have the second option, which is the actual lockbox, the technology one that is created to where we all have an access key that hits it. It's a code specifically for us, and we put the code in. We're able to take the key out, and then we're able to access the home. Those of you who are new, you're always like, "Oh, I don't know how I'm going to do that." It is not difficult. Most of the boards have very good descriptions, videos showing you how to do it. Certainly for our crew, the first time you do it, all you have to do is ask us. We can show you in less than 2 minutes how to pop that key out. And it is like riding a bike. Once you do it, you really should never forget. I will tell you, though, the combo boxes, they can be irritating. There are some combo boxes that you have to do certain things with. And there's not a realtor on the face of this planet that hasn't experienced one of those combos where they can't get it closed. And like all of us, they just end up leaving the box open because they're pissed at it. So that's normal. That's pretty normal. And God forbid you have to go through the terrible initiation of becoming a realtor where you're showing in the summer and it's your first showing and you cannot unlock the combo, not because you don't know the combo, you don't understand how to unlock that specific combo box.
Yep. The ones with the letters on it.
Right?
Oh God,
all of us
brutal.
have done it before.
Brutal. Or where your Supra stops working, your key box. And
well, that's true too. And you do have technology issues where sometimes the download isn't correct, or it's jammed, or something's wrong with your phone in general. So there are things that can cause us issues. And yes, it's quite embarrassing because it's hard to schedule people where they want to show a house and they get there and then something goes wrong. So that happens too. We open up the house. This is a very quick overview. There's a lot more that goes on to this, but we're not going to link in everything that we do when we're showing a house, but we're going to basically show you what you do need to be responsible for. When you go in, it's suggested that we don't want you to be right on their tail the entire way. We want them to have some freedom. A lot of times when I go in a house, I'm like, hey, look, y'all, feel free to look everywhere you want to in this house. We're not telling someone to go looking through their personal things, but if they want to open up a closet or a major cabinet, not a dresser drawer, we're going to go ahead and encourage them to do so. But we're basically going to probably stay a room back and say, look, I'm right here. Y'all just let me know if you have any questions. Now, if you're in a real luxury home where the seller's been very clear that they would have to be luxury. If it's any home where the seller is instructed that they want you to be with them the entire time, then you need to have something in if the notes say that you have to be with them, then you have to be with them.
That's awesome when that happens and the kids run upstairs.
Oh, God. So, you talk about a whole nother episode when we get into showing safety. You'd be shocked how many times we tell you that we've had issues where a child has either jumped off a stairwell or fell down the stairs because the parents weren't watching.
Someone posted in our group, not in our group, but our market center page, that they saw, I think it was an inspection, or somebody came for an inspection, and there was a loaded handgun just sitting on the dresser.
That is
right there.
Just not okay. And we'll take away from that for another subject. We tell all of our sellers anything that's controversial or anything that's of danger or of value, it should not be laying around. Nobody should have access to it. Either should be removed from the premises, period, or it should be in a secure place that nobody can get to it except the seller themselves.
Yep.
Goes for your drugs too. Want to know what the number one item stolen in a house is? Brent, do you have a guess?
The cocaine on your desk?
Not the cocaine, but the marijuana.
Really?
Marijuana's the number one item. And you know why that is?
Oh, I would have thought it would have been prescription pills.
Well, actually, they're pretty damn close. They're pretty close. But you know why they're the number one item stolen? Because when somebody looks somewhere where they know that it probably is, they're like, well, they shouldn't have that either. Because they know that they're probably not going to say anything.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. All right, so we see that every once in a while. So we want to show the house. We're going to give them some room. There are certain exceptions that we were just talking about. But the point is, we don't want to be, the point we're trying to make here is we don't want to be overbearing to them. The job is to get the house shown so they can get a visual as to, is this the house that I want? Is this somewhere that I think I could possibly live? If they're going in and out super quick, it's obvious to us that that's not the house for them. If they start spending longer times than they do in the other ones, that should be a hint to us that we should be observing more as to what they're looking at, because it means it's something that they like.
Yep.
You should be engaging in the showings, especially the first few. There's, even to this day, I will still ask the buyer the first few times. I'll be like, hey, look, what do you think about that kitchen? Because I want to know, are they granite people? Are they Corian counter people? I'll be like, hey, what do you think about that flooring? Are they tile people? Are they hardwood people? There are a few people that I need to know, there are a few questions I need answered in the beginning so I can start trying to figure out what it is that they want. And of course, I'm paying attention to their looks and how excited they are, because I am trying to formulate what I really think they want. You can observe a lot by just watching them and how they spend in certain rooms. Brent, by far, what are the most important rooms in the house that we should be paying attention to?
Kitchen, living room, master bedroom, master bath.
Yeah. Easy on the master bath. We have people in Houston that is banned. In Houston, they are not allowed to use that. Brent's okay because in Dallas they don't do that, but in Houston they have banned
The primary bath. The primary bath. I
By the
refuse.
way, I was just informed too, and I was corrected on it. They are no longer using the family room.
Right, but remember my comment about that?
Mm-mm.
It's written on a 1 to 4 family
Oh,
contract. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. That was a good comment. Yeah, Brett's talking about. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and there are some metropolitan areas right now that are banning the use of that type of name, as they say it violates the Fair Housing Act, which we're not going to get into. But Brent was very convenient to say, well, it's kind of hard when the contract itself says 1 to 4 family. No one ever accused him of being slow. He's pretty quick, so that was always a good one. All right, so we show the house. They get we take our analysis, and there's a lot more to that. But again, this is a generic overview, and our hope is that they're going to get to a point where they are finally getting to where this is the house we think we want. Okay, so we're gonna get there. We're going to find the house. Let's say they actually do go through, and they said that's the house I want to go with. Now you're going to find that this particular episode blends with some of the other ones where we talk about offers, negotiations, comps, and that's true because the entire process of what we do is embedded in working with the buyer and working with the seller. But here we're focusing on the outline, not the details. For instance, we're about to say, well, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to comp the house. Well, the comp is a 4-episode series. So we're not going to talk about comps, but we're going to say that is what we're going to be doing. Okay, so we're doing the overview here. And sometimes the shows that are more effective are the ones that do the overview versus the detail. Because a lot of times where the people are really lost is in the process itself. And if you just step back and look at the process, you're like, well, it's not that difficult. You get the specs and go show the house, negotiate, check the comps, negotiate. Try. Hopefully they get it accepted. If not, we keep looking until we do, and then we schedule inspections and it goes very quick.
Yep.
But the individual pieces take a lot longer. So we're doing the overview here. They find the house. They want to do the house. Brent, what's the next step when they find a house? What is it that we're going to do for them?
Well, the first thing we're going to do is, we're going to comp it to make sure
Right?
it's in line, and we're not going to go over that too much.
Because-
But we're going to make sure. Yeah, it takes forever.
Yeah. What is it why are we checking the comps?
Well, we want to make sure that our buyers aren't going to overpay. We're going to make sure that appraisal is not going to be an issue for them down the road. And that's pretty much why we
Say it
check
a different
the comps.
way. Say it a different way. Why else might we check the comps?
Because we want to make sure that we're getting them the best price possible.
And be more specific than that.
Why don't you just tell me the answer that you're looking for?
No, you're doing good. Sometimes you're saying things that I wouldn't have said. One of the main reasons we're doing is to make sure that seller's in line and they're not the ones that are screwing around. And Brent said that for the most part, but the reason why I'm saying it like that directly
I wouldn't have said
is
that.
when he does comps, we have to be prepared that if the comp suggests one thing and the seller is out of their mind,
Yeah.
we have to say, hey, look, the chances of this working are probably going to be low because the seller is obviously very stubborn.
Yep.
And the logic tells us we should offer here, but they're going to tell us no by what they're listed at.
Yeah, a lot of times I almost discourage them from making an offer if the guy's way overpriced. They're unreasonable.
That's a huge danger as a listing agent. Those of you who have always been propositioned by a seller to overprice, which in this market is actually probably okay. Historically, it's not. That's what you're setting yourself up for. That if you put it too high, you might have actually ran off somebody that would have put a really decent offer in, but you pissed them off so much that now they don't even want to work with you. Okay, and that's a reality that we face. So we go in, we do the comps. We're trying to suggest where they're at now. The comps are doing the purpose of telling us what the house is worth. So once we find out the house is worth, what is it that we're going to do when we start comprising that offer?
Well, I mean, we're gonna want to look at that seller's disclosure as well to make sure that there's not any.
No. Before you get
issue.
there, you get there on the offer itself, we're not going to offer what the house is worth.
Well, it depends which market we're talking about, right?
True. Let's talk historically.
Historically, no.
Let's do the right way.
No. I mean, usually historically, if it's priced correctly, we'll probably come in 10 grand low,
Yeah.
you know, and then we'll negotiate back and forth to be either right on or about 5 grand under, something like that.
I'm with y'all. I've been pointing that out for the last few episodes, and it's starting to become a greater trend because I worried about this earlier this year, and now I'm really starting to worry about it. We have a lot of agents that have not experienced the normal market, which means they don't know how to be a normal real estate agent. They only know what they're seeing. And what that means is, as the market eventually shifts, because real estate is cyclical and it always shifts, we're going to have the greatest class of agents that are 4 or 5 years into this that don't have the faintest idea how to do it right. And that is a real concern. So I still like to teach the historically correct way. And what he just said is right. So we want to make sure that we get those numbers because we're usually not going to be offering the list price. Actually, if you wanted to be a smart aleck about it, that still exists today, except now we're going the opposite way. Now is it how much higher do we need to go? Whereas normally we're like how much lower, right? So that's one thing that's in place for us as we do that. We're going to draft the offer up, right? And we already talked about the one component. Now there are 30 to 40 other items in that contract that are negotiable or that need to be discussed in this process. Those are week-long classes. And obviously that's not the intent of this show. So be advised that we are telling you the process right now, but there's a lot that goes into that. So we're actually going to go through and we're going to draft the contract, and there's a lot of things that go into that particular piece. Once the contract is drafted, Brent, what are the next steps? We have a contract that's drafted. I'm breaking my own effing rule. We do not have a contract. So take a takeaway from something I just said. That's a terrible mistake that I usually bitch at everybody about, and I just did it myself.
Well, it is on a contract.
It's not, though. It's not a contract.
It's written on a 1 to 4 family contract. It's written on it.
But it's considered an offer, right?
It is considered an offer.
Till it's signed. So we have, we're putting this offer together, right? We're putting this offer together. What do we do once we have the offer drafted? What are the next steps? Because that's part of the outline process.
All right. Well, we send it to our buyers to sign, and then we forward it over to the listing agent. And, you know, hopefully you've spoken to the listing agent prior to signing that offer, because you want to make sure that they don't have any offers that are already working. You want to find out what's important to that seller, and maybe you can find ways to make your offer a little bit better. And you're going to send it over while they go and review it. Hopefully it gets accepted.
Be a little more specific about the submission of the offer. What is it that we tell the agents to do?
Well, I mean, as far as, you know, after it's signed, we put it in an email.
No.
We like to.
Right. I'm sorry. Right. After the buyer signs, then what?
Yep. Yeah. Well, we put it in an email. I like to put down a summary of the offer in the email, just so it's easier for an agent to look over it and see exactly what it is instead of having to fish through it, especially in today's market. They want to see at a quick glimpse what it is.
And that's the takeaway I wanted you to get from this, is that a lot of you always have this, you're like, well, what's the process? What's the formal? There is no formal process. We actually do submit it via email. We typically have an intro summary, either talking about the highlights or something else that we want to convey that we think might help our offer, and then we send it. It is good operational policy to not only ask the agent to confirm it via email, but to also text them and say, hey, I just want to make sure that you have my offer, because there are many times that the agent does not get the offer, and the next thing you know, you're 2 days into it, and you're like, you think they haven't responded, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Which, by the way, that is your fault. That is a terrible thing to do. It is careless. If you didn't have enough professionalism and competence to make sure that someone had an offer that your client's really intense about, that is your fault. That falls under so many of the components of what we're responsible for. You know, your old car, your responsibilities to a buyer, your obedience, loyalty, disclosure, competence. All these things fall into that. So you can't just shrug your shoulders and say, yeah, whatever, because it does not work like that. So we're going to put all that stuff together. We're going to make sure they got the offer. Brent, even though there really is no set in stone, actually, that's not true anymore. there really is no set in stone procedure on how the seller responds to you. However, as of this year, which it was long overdue, is there now, you might not even know this, is there now a time frame for the other person to respond? I haven't heard of that, have you?
No, I didn't know that. There is?
There is. Track past, for all of you smart aleck agents out there that think you don't have to respond, you do. You got 48 hours to respond.
What does that mean? Like a yes or no, or just yes, we received it, we're waiting through the weekend?
Yeah, either way that they responded on it. If they respond generically that it's a yes, then it becomes, well, if that's what you're going to do, then I'm not going to sit here and wait for the next answer, because I would have expected a response, from some type of counter. But that is a good question. I'd love to see how Trek handles that. But yeah, 48 hours. Now, where I was going with that, as far as procedure goes, there really is no procedure written in stone for what the seller is going to do with it. What the seller should do is immediately talk to their the agent should immediately talk to their seller and say, look, we got this offer in. Here are the highlights. Here are the concerns. Let us know what you think. Sometimes the seller will say, I want a night to think about it. Sometimes they're like, I'll respond right now. Sometimes they're like, I want to wait for more offers, which, there's some goods and bads to that. But the bottom line is it's nothing set in stone, but the ultimate goal is that we're waiting for a response to them. Okay. They're either going to accept it in full, which most rarely do, counter it completely, or maybe ask for some small adjustments, which is a counter in itself, or withdraw the offer period if they decided to change their mind and it had not been accepted up to that point. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we do that, and then we eventually go to where we hopefully get the offer signed and executed. So now we're in contract, right?
Yep.
So what are the first few steps? And y'all, we are going through the buyer checklist at a very quick speed because we are doing the outline of it. There are tons of things that consume our day in these pieces, but we're doing the outline of it because we want you to know what are the steps I'm supposed to do. So we go under contract as the buyer agent. What do we have to tell our buyer immediately? What are the things that have to be done right away now that we have an executed contract?
Yep. So there's a few things, right? First of all, depending on whose title company got written down, it's usually the seller's, but we got to make sure that gets sent off to the title company. If you're using a lender, that contract needs to be sent to that lender ASAP so they can start working on it. Your buyer needs to write, now one check that's going to be a combination of the earnest money and the option fee. And that's got to be delivered to the title company within 2 days of contract. Well, it's actually 3 days contract. 3 days,
that's right. Now I want to point out to our crew, especially, if you're watching inside the tutorials, that stuff has changed recently. It is 72 hours, and you only have to write one check. That would be different in our tutorials where we say separate. That's because it's changed recently.
Nice. Now buyers can wire option and earnest.
I see Venmo and Zelle taking a lot more too.
Yep.
Okay. So that was right. That was the next step. Get the monies out. Even though you have 72 hours, there's no way I'm waiting 72 hours.
No.
I will tell you from a legal perspective, they've also changed that if the 72-hour, the third day, ends on the Saturday or the Sunday, then it automatically goes to the Monday. So you actually end up having 5 days.
Yep.
Small little takeaway here from an experience level. If you've got a client that they're out of town and it's going to be a little bit difficult to get the monies out, sometimes it's good to have the execution date on a Wednesday because we know that's going to give them till Monday. If there's a holiday on Monday, it might even be extended to Tuesday or Wednesday.
And that's why a lot of times as listing agents, we like to execute that contract at night. Like if we get it, we're not waiting until the morning. We're executing it that night.
So that's actually a good negotiation tactic. It's amazing to me how many agents submit a contract and they're ready to get it executed, and they're so excited about getting it executed, they really don't think about the timelines. If it's 11 o'clock at night and you're a listing agent and you've got the signatures, execute that damn thing, because that day starts now, meaning tomorrow, which is only like an hour or two away. That's the first day. So you can shorten that option period. Some of you are like, oh, that's pretty scummy. No,
you want to lock it in. Because if you're not executed, they can pull their offer real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
protecting
You have to know
yourself.
the whole point is you have to know what you're doing. You have to know the side steps in there. So that's one of them. Next step, what's the big one after that? They got that. We're rocking and rolling.
Hire an inspector. Let's get an inspector scheduled ASAP.
Yeah.
Especially because option periods are so much shorter today.
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 days.
Here is we do not want the inspection to be scheduled the day before the option is over. We want it as quick as possible, and we want to have multiple days if we need to review or request some other type of work. Another takeaway from here is that we as the agent are never the ones who call the inspector. We can refer them, but we do not call them or specify anything to them. Another takeaway, lots of takeaways in this process. When you refer, which you should, you better refer 3 people, always 3. And you always make it clear that we have no affiliation with that person and it's their choice if that's who they decide to go with. Okay.
Hence my name change.
CYA over here. That's probably his middle initials there.
Should be.
Okay. So we do that. We go through. We have one more barrier. Well, really 2 more barriers. But what's the next one? Let's say we get past it. We're going to go through. We're going to negotiate. The buyer has the choice to ask the seller, I want these things fixed. Seller doesn't have to fix them if they don't want to. But if they don't want to, the buyer can back out and get their earnest money back. If the seller says, all right, I'll go ahead and fix it, they sign an amendment and we continue on with the contract. Those repairs don't have to be done during the option period, but they have to be done prior to the close. Our next obstacle becomes?
Appraisal.
Yeah. If it's through finance, the home's going to have to make appraisal, which means it has to make value. Now, this is a very construed conversation right now because almost all the houses are having trouble making their appraisal, and we pretty much know before we get in there that the buyer better have funds to back it up and pay for the difference if it's not there. So we're going to be more quick on this conversation because it's tough to have the historical one right now because it's just completely out the window. But historical purposes say that house has to be approved for a loan. The way it has to be approved for the loan, the bank won't get the money unless they believe that it's worth the value that the contract's written for. Okay.
Yep.
And then probably the final thing that we're waiting for as we approach the close, and it's the most obvious, is that the buyer doesn't get cold feet and they actually go through with what they said they were going to do. And we're always worried about unexpected explanations or occurrences such as a surprise divorce, separation, or job loss, or God forbid a death, which does happen from time to time. We're going to have to safeguard those processes as we get closer to finishing this up. But let's say everything goes good and we've finished all the requirements and now we're ready to close. So from the buyer perspective, what are we going to do for the buyer to make sure they're ready to finalize this?
So we're going to be in contact with the buyer and the lender, making sure that that buyer knows exactly how much they need to wire to title or to get a cashier's check for. And we prepare them. There's going to be a initial closing disclosure and a final one, and they're off usually sometimes. That initial has to be out 3 days before closing to give them enough time to review it, which can be a problem sometimes. If the title company has a hard time, lender has a hard time getting docs out, then if you don't have those 3 days, and if that shows up on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday, now you're not closing until Monday, and then that's just a whole other thing.
Yep. He said it right on the money. We're going to review them. We're going to prepare them. We're going to make sure they're ready to go. We're going to get them in there the next day. We're going to sign the paperwork. We're going to assume the seller signs the paperwork. We're going to assume the bank gets the money over and that we are given the keys. And we have therefore just finished the process of going through working with the buyer at the highest level as far as just the generic. There are so many things, literally probably 6 months worth of the episodes that we do are embedded in what we just said. But the purpose of this was to give you the overview as to what it's like in working with the buyer. And that is just like perfect timing because that's really what we had set for today, is to get through that piece. Brent, if you really could go ahead and hit our sponsors because we always appreciate them. And then I'm going to wrap up.
Sure. All right, Martin Cooley with BPG Inspections is our go-to home inspector. We, of course, always give our clients a number of inspectors to choose from, but Martin is the inspector we prefer. He is always on time or early, finished in a timely manner, gets the report to you the same day, and all reports are color-coded. Red for serious issues and blue for minor things to look at. You can always book him at bpginspections.com or reach him at 817-401-3240. And our second sponsor is Greg Holbrook with Liberator Health Insurance. Your simple solution to affordable healthcare is here. Join the Liberator movement and take control of your healthcare. Customize your healthcare plan to fit your healthcare and budget needs. Use any doctor or hospital without a penalty, in or out of network. Teledoc is included in all plans, no annual deductibles, and no copay. Liberator deal of the week, a businesswoman was able to get a great plan for $164 per month. As an independent agency, Liberator is committed to transforming healthcare in Texas through innovative healthcare plans that are affordable and rich in benefits. For more information and to get a quick quote, call or text Greg Holbrook, independent health insurance broker, at 214-886-4688, or visit them at liberatorhealthinsurance.com.
Well done. As always, we appreciate our sponsors. We don't throw anybody out there that we don't know personally and that we don't think does a very good job. So we're very grateful for each of those sponsors. I want to thank everybody for watching the show. We always love having you guys. We love the archive views. And we always encourage that if you get anything out of this, make sure that you pass it on to somebody else. The show is well watched amongst the agent community, especially the new agents that are out there. And that's something that we want to continue. We do believe it as a very good source to help a lot of people that just cannot get the support anywhere else. It has nothing to do with being biased about our own show. There is no extra money that comes in for the amount of views that we get, although our sponsors certainly appreciate that. It really is more geared towards building a process where someone can go to get the resources that they're just not getting anywhere else. Y'all, we hope you have a great week. Always go to joinswr.com if you're interested, or if you know anybody else is interested in becoming a real estate agent. Our contact information is on that site as well. Feel free to reach out to us if you need anything. You guys have a great week. Have a great 4th of July, because we are already there next week, and we'll keep moving on, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.